Welcome to Business Talk on businesstech.co.za, South Africa's #1 business and news website. I'm your host, as always, Michael Avery. And hold on to your hats, because in just 3 short years, our workplaces have transformed faster than a superhero in a phone booth. And guess what? The pace of change is about to kick into overdrive. We're talking skill shortages, Gen Z bringing a whole new set of expectations, and technologies like AI that are so mind-blowing they'll probably even make the Jetsons jealous. So let's get into this discussion around how the workplace of the future is going to look and evolve and change. What does that mean for organizations? We've got a very distinguished guest with us, Lesley-Anne Gatter, the Global Head of People and Organization at Investec, probably one of the most entrepreneurial organizations in South Africa. Lesley-Anne, an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Let's just kick off with the technology side of the equation. And I think everyone has come to realize that through COVID, technology is that transformative thing in the workplace. As a result, what shifts are we seeing when it comes to career paths due to technology?
Thanks so much, Michael. It's so good to be with you today, and we really appreciate this conversation, which is filled with depth and complexity, and we're kind of navigating and finding our way through it without clear answers yet, just because the terrain is so novel at the moment. But I guess the place to start is absolutely right. At this exponential tech that is taking over our existence. And on the one hand, I think there's just these binary responses. The one is the super excitement at all of what is plausible and possible now. And the other is a great fear about the loss of jobs, the loss of capacity, the loss of ability, and, the looming robots taking over, I guess. So I think what has changed massively, to start off with your point around recruitment, is twofold. I guess the way we recruit, just as a note, is a little different, because the technology has brought presence. Look at how you and I are talking to each other today. We're really able to investigate, understand people's qualities, their capabilities, how they show up, and then their very presence through the tech in a totally different way. But the other more significant and possibly impactful change is really that, previously we were looking for data scientists, and then we were looking for software engineers, and then we were looking for recruiters, recruitment consultants. Now we need a critical mix of skills. So we're still looking for the data scientist, and we're still after the software engineer, and the competitive landscape is big in that regard. But everybody needs critical cross-field skills. We need people who are data scientists in and of themselves, even when they're in the recruitment space, or they are in the HR consulting space, or they are a banker. The ability to work with data, the ability to understand how machines impact what we do, and the kind of personalization possible is really, I think, the edge at where we're pushing to. So, if we use like the idea of the cardiologist, which is, I think, a too well-used kind of metaphor, is the idea was that the cardiologist would be out of work, right? The machine would be able to do all those diagnostics, and would be able to work much quicker than the cardiologist, with much more data, aggregate much better. We now really think the cardiologist won't be out of work, but his or her skill changes massively in that their ability to work with data is actually the task now, and then the personal engagement with the patient. So we're in a similar space as bankers, as wealth managers, as asset managers. We're very busy with how the tech informs the daily work, the mainstream work that we're busy with.
Yeah. And it almost becomes a language that one now needs to be able to be fluent in, to be able to operate. And you often hear the word T-shaped skills. You kind of have a deep specialization, but you've got to have a broad general knowledge. I liken it to almost an M-shaped skill now, because you almost have to have a much deeper skill set in various areas, and then a more general skill set above that, so like the letter M. And with that comes a whole range of opportunities, but also challenges. And I think this, along with the emerging industries, have obviously resulted in not only a skill shift, but also a shift in recruitment as well. And you touched on it, but can you elaborate on how this has really impacted on the way you recruit at Investec?
Yes. So the reality is we now have a workforce that has changed massively. The kind of skills you require inside the workforce has changed. So at Investec, for example, just about more than 1 in 4, so a quarter of our workforce is all based in digital and tech. Whereas you would imagine that a quarter of your workforce at a bank or half your workforce in a bank, is frontline bankers. But the reality is that we are seeing a massive shift from the regulatory environment, from the digital and tech environment, from the real people flavor work, the kind of high touch involvement is really where the emphasis now is. And so while we still absolutely require the skills of engineers and of course CAs and investment professionals, we as much require the massive capability of software engineers, of data scientists, and of people who could work across those mediums to really interpret and make sense of that. It means we're looking in spaces that we never have for technologists and other kind of skilled workers who talk to this new world of work. We're looking in places like FMCGs, which we haven't been able to do before. You don't need to know the world of banking necessarily to work in a bank now. We're really looking at the capability across to work with data, to work with machine learning, to work with personalization. And then because of who we are, we really are after high touch always. We're after that deep experience for clients and our own employees. That's very, very personal. That's very high touch. So we need emotional intelligence. We're looking for a social quality in people that is possibly sometimes contradictory to the way that young people are growing up now in a world of screens and a 2D existence, because we're really looking for this deep 3D thing. But I think similar to, the work of Yuval Harari and the way in which he spoke about this marrying of this deep data, gaming and machine learning capability comes the ability to be highly social and highly philosophical in the way in which we work.
Wow, and it's clearly a shift for a bank to start thinking in this way. And it reminds me of what Stephen Kossoff always used to say about, the old dogs and the young pups in the organization having to have that ability to build relationships because it is high touch. And I know many wealth managers, for example, 5, 6, 7 years ago, were talking pre-COVID of robo-advice, and that's going to do, the bulk of the work. And what we've realized is that ultimately we're human beings. We need that high touch. We need the human interaction. But the technology is there to augment and advance the ability of the way we service and serve people. And I find it in my day-to-day work as a journalist, a financial journalist, I can transcribe interviews much quicker nowadays using AI, Sonics.ai, and all of these tools are really adding to my productivity. But another thing that's so important, given that you're looking for skilled professionals with all of these diverse qualities, is retention and ensuring that you create an environment that is one where you go and you want to work. And I know Investec has always kind of had that, one of the first banks to do away with the formal collar and that kind of thing. What in your mind is driving retention today? So
I think the question is really, really valuable because what it points to is that the world has changed so massively. And there's possibly two things to say. In line exactly with what you said about how the AI and the machines have enabled your work. We've really moved from being copywriters to editors now in so many ways, and it's applicable to so many different fields. So the quality of work has improved. So as an employer, you really have to make sure that you're focusing on the quality of work, irrespective of where you are you're in your tech journey. Because that's people's expectations. The people's expectation is that now work gets better. With the advent of how personal the computer gets, we get a different kind of personal. With the advent of how much of the robotics and the kind of, automated work that the computer does, we can now do human work. We can really enter into that space. So if you can't be providing opportunities for your people that really are that better job, that bigger value add, and the more sophisticated engagement that they're looking for, you do have an issue with retention. So you're always having to look at assignments and the way in which work is taking place. I think the other piece is really to say one of the products of COVID we believe is, in spite of the devastation, obviously, of the pandemic, we think that one of the things to come out of it is a little bit of a more empathic, more considered, more purposeful world. And we as an organization have evolved into that. And because of how automated things have become, we see that purpose is a major factor in retention now. A world that is much more circular, less linear. It doesn't like corporate ladders, but like circular learning journeys. And so the other factor of retention is really, how do you create an ecosystem inside yourself where you provide purposeful work that is imbued with purpose, like the work, whether you are in aviation finance or you are doing logistics and moving, ships across the world, which is some of what we do in finance here. And of course, our vast experience in a private bank that has been the foundation of our work is, how do you imbue all of that with purpose? How do we talk about the enduring worth, which is our purpose, in each person's work? Is there enduring worth? And so we have to create multiple learning paths and journeys for our people, that they feel like they have mobility and they are continually in a learning cycle. It doesn't mean that they're climbing a hierarchy, because the hierarchy is so much less important in a circular world, a sustainable world that's after ecosystems and circular economies. But you do have to be creating deep learning, multiple experiences, and the work needs to be imbued with ethics and meaning all the time. And these are very complex challenges where, climbing corporate ladders and competency frameworks solve for that in a much easier way on a balanced scorecard. This is really humanity at its core.
Yeah. I mean, Robert Kaplan, for all the work, the good he's done in business and the balanced scorecard and KPIs. I mean, some of these things are very difficult to measure and encapsulate in something that is as cold and soulless as a KPI, which sometimes does just feel like ticking a box. But coming back to your point about purpose, and I was chatting to Dr. Greg Klein about the work that Investec Banking for Business is doing in helping clients with their trade finance. And we know the debtors are stretching and providing that bridging finance, and knowing that you're able to keep another small to medium-sized business in South Africa, in an economy where businesses are hitting the wall. I mean, that provides huge purpose in and of itself. But from a business and strategy perspective, have these shifts also changed the way you look at acquiring and retaining clients, not only the skills inside the organization?
Yes, absolutely. So I think from a very particular point of view, and we can, talking the private bank, the foundation of where we come from is really around, we've had a very traditional way of acquiring clients. We've looked at qualifications as well as earning capability. But now we see that the traditional qualifications that were thought to be, very risk contained and very appropriate for securing debt and providing loans has changed materially in this world that has changed. And so we've really opened our parameters wide. We've embraced this new world of work. We've embraced the capability of how people now earn in this economy and the way in which skills are moving. And we've sought to say that it's not about your qualification anymore. It's rather about your earning capability in these changing spaces and fields of work. And you don't have to have a physical structure to say you're at work anymore. We buy into the gig economy. We buy into remote work. We understand that skills are heavily transferable. We understand that people can move between multiple platforms and capabilities. And we really now are just looking at earnings. We see that HR professionals have never been, in more demand. And so an HR professional is exciting for us. Obviously, we've worked a lot already with data and software engineers, and we've seen how we can build open APIs so that they can really customize and personalize their banking. So we're really trying to meet the different professions that are arising, simply in the context of how you earn, and that at a certain minimum, we will bank you because this world is no longer as linear or as constrained as imagining only doctors and only accountants are the high earners. Those markets are still very important to us, and we see the value in those people without a doubt, but we're after different complexity and a kind of new world of work and those skills.
It sounds like we might have to chat after this interview. Now, how are you engaging these new professionals when it comes to the offerings that you're tailoring for them? Can you give us an example of maybe some of the programs or initiatives that Investec designed to engage and develop this emerging talent within the business?
Yeah. So I think the idea that I mentioned before around working with tech professionals, digital and tech professionals on the open platform has been quite unique for us. We've understood that they want to work inside the technology and they want to customize their banking experience in a very unique way. And so we opened up the platform so that digital and tech people could choose how they bank in a very specific way. But still keeping the high touch component to it. We continue to work with, and you mentioned Stephen, and he spoke about this yesterday actually with us, around how so many different employers have outsourced things like call centers, to different parts of the world or different locations within the country. But at Investec, right below where I'm sitting, is our huge client support center, where we hire grads and others into our space and really work with them to understand who they're talking to, the human on the phone, so that they can have a very high touch, this very social and meaningful experience with our clients. And so that really targets across the board, and that initiative continues.
I've got to ask you about culture, because I've found it's the one thing potentially that this technology has weakened. The social glue that binds people around the water cooler, talking about the Springboks on a Friday, everyone coming in their Springbok jerseys, that kind of thing that builds relationships, that is so important to that nebulous intangible called culture inside an organization. Then you put a screen between people. People can work from home. It's great. It's more flexible. I've got kids. I love it. But I don't have that human interaction as much as I used to.
Yeah.
How are you managing culture in this context of a new kind of dynamic hybrid twat Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday type economy? Because I found that's probably the biggest challenge.
So you're 100% right, and I think there's like another 15 inserts we need to do just to tackle this topic, because you just hit the nub of everything that's going on. So look, Investec's a culture strong organization. We have, through our founders and others, positioned culture for an exceptionally long time. I think, to talk generically though, culture is built on ritual, it's built on tradition, it's built on practices that you put into your organization and the kind of artifacts you have around. And I think we would be naive to say that can't be built online. If you are very attentive and very deliberate to the type of culture you want and the way in which it can be accessed and delivered through tech platforms, then absolutely you will build that culture. But whatever culture you're after, you need to cultivate. You need to really prune it and plant it and work with it. So I believe that culture can be built online. I think the problem with hybrid is that what's turning out as, many of us who've been in this profession for a while had hoped hybrid was the best of everything. But it's turning out that evidence is showing us through corporates across the globe that hybrid is the worst of everything. And that it's extremely difficult from a culture point of view to build culture online, to build culture 2D and through the screen, although one can do that if the organization is just online. And then to build culture additionally in the office. And the two narratives really do compete. I think our culture positioned us particularly well. To have 1 second on that is just our culture positioned us well. We've said for many years that we are about flexibility and output and performance, and we aren't about clock watching and time. Way before COVID, we went to flexible leave and said, people inside Investec don't have leave days. We don't prescribe your holiday. Just work, perform, be out of the ordinary and have whatever days you need. We don't want to treat you like an adult. Yeah. So we've reverted or returned rather to that frame. But we have decided our culture lives best inside our buildings. And so our rituals, our practices, our artifacts and traditions live here in a very face-to-face, high energy, high contact way. So we're not so much about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're about deliver, perform, and then leverage and mandate flexibility.
Yeah, empower people. And I love that. Just treat them like adults. And adults will understand the need for being in the office because they understand the importance of the culture and just being in a dynamic organization such as you've just described. Lesley-Anne, thank you very much. Great insights into the evolving landscape of work and how Investec is navigating these changes. No one has all the answers, but it sounds like you really are thinking really deeply about what the future is looking like. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.